about it during the semester, VR is going to be virtually ubiquitous in the healthcare system, along with augmented reality. So Hamish is here to share his expertise with you. Some of you might be doing an advanced project with Hamish. If you like what he's doing, we can organise a tour for you to the laboratory, okay? So with that, with Craig. Hamish, over to you. And David, see David Cook's here. David comes to Masterclasses too because we want to learn too, okay? So off you go.
Hello, thanks very much for having us. So yes, I thought I'd do a dual screen thing here since you've got two fancy screens, one with boring old slides and one with a live feed of what Elodie's doing in this cheapy headset. The one downside to that is it's a ridiculously low resolution by the time it's been screened, mirrored on my crappy old phone and then pumped into this video projector. What she's seeing is super high resolution 3D immersive images, so you have to kind of see beyond that. The upside is that we don't have to carry around the equipment. Normally when we do this demo, we wheel in a $5,000 laptop and we put up two beacons with laser positioners on them, and then we wire up all these power cables, and we have a tether to the headset, and it's all a real pain in the proverb, basically. But now it's, as Phil was explaining, it's just a portable headset, $600, a tenth of the price of what we were wheeling out 6 months ago. I guess it's one of the take-home messages is that virtual reality is just evolving so quickly that if you still think it looks ridiculous wearing, a lunchbox on your face and low-resolution graphics and then kind of cartoonish visuals, just wait 3 months and see that it's going to be twice as good and then twice as good and then twice as good. You don't have to be twice as good too many times before something gets really amazing. So we do human factors. Human factors is, considering the human in a broader context. The classic example is a pilot in an aircraft. So if you don't consider the strengths and weaknesses of humans in terms of perception and fatigue and visual abilities and how far they can reach, that kind of stuff, then you design a bad aircraft, and a bad aircraft is not good for anyone. So the sorts of people that are interested in that are NASA and ESA. These are people we've previously had money off. Defence science, those kinds of people that have, hardware and they have software and they have what the defence calls wetware, so the soldiers' decision-making and the other human factors. For that, we do a whole lot of high-techy stuff. We have drive simulators and motion simulators, and we do all sorts. And this is what the facility looks like. It's just up the road, less than probably 100 yards from here, where we've got the whole ground floor of Griffith Taylor building. So it's directly across from Manning Bar. Everybody knows where that is. And we have this floor of the building full of simulators and tracking volumes for virtual reality and real cars to drive for research, that kind of stuff. And this is our list of gear. So, people who come to visit the lab and they're always asking, is this really psychology? Because we have laser cutters and we have 3D printers and we do surface mount electronics and we have, crazy moving gadgets, and people are often wondering, this is not the psychology I'm anticipating where you lie down and you explain how you feel about your mother. We never ask anyone how they feel about their mothers in our lab. Here's a picture of one of the real car simulators. So it's a bit like a video game, except we have a real car because participants tend to take it more seriously if they're sitting in a car instead of sitting at a table driving. When we put them in this car, they carefully put their seatbelts on and they check their mirrors and they indicate to pull out, and we get data that was more similar to what they would do on the road, and then we can compare that with how other groups drive. So we've done crystal methamphetamine addicts, and we've done people with vision field deficits and zero inner ear balance function. This is a motion simulator. If I press play, you'll probably see this one jumping around. So this is 6 degrees of freedom. In AeroEng, they have a motion simulator, 3 degrees of freedom. This houses 6 degrees of freedom, which means it can go up and down and side to side and roll and pitch and yaw, and it basically can give you a pretty good impression that you really are driving or flying or whatever it is that we're trying to convince you. We now have another one of these with virtual reality, and that's even more convincing because the vision is compelling, the auditory signals are compelling, the motion is compelling. You start to think, I really am flying this plane. So the story for me started not really 500 years ago, but 20 years ago. It feels like 500 years ago. So as part of my honours project, while I was here at Sydney Uni, I got to go to America and work on a project that flew on the space shuttle. My team were flying a little centrifuge so we could spin people and make artificial gravity, and it was a vestibular thing. But there was another team on the same project in this metal tube called NeuroLab that were using virtual reality to try and understand the astronauts' spatial disorientation, or at least the problems they had with spatial orientation. So they had the world's best and most expensive VR headset, $100,000 headset. And I thought, this is amazing, I'm going to finally try VR, it's going to be just like the movies. And it was really awful, of course. At that stage, 20 years ago, the resolution was really crap. The tiny little screens just felt like a postage card in front of you. As soon as you moved your head, you felt motion sick because the tracking was awful, and I was really disappointed. But even then, I could see the potential. Arguably, if you can control the sensory input to a person's brain, then you can control their entire world, because the world is nothing more than a stream of sensory information. If I can change that sensory information, then I'm in charge of your world, or I'm in charge of my world. And the potential is massive, but the technology very disappointing at this stage. That's what the astronauts were doing, seeing themselves upside down and trying to work out which way was up. That's what virtual reality looked like for the next 15 years. Ridiculous labs around the world probably didn't think they were ridiculous, so maybe I shouldn't say that. They were doing their best with the state of current technology and wearing crazy suits covered in markers and giant headsets weighing 10 kilograms, and they were getting motion sick and feeling awful. Everybody kind of ignored them until this headset came along 5 years ago, a thing called an Oculus Rift. You might have heard of it. The guy, Palmer Luckey, who put this on Kickstarter, got $2 million in pledges, and Facebook bought him for $2.5 billion. So the guy now lives on an island somewhere. Not because he was a genius, he just got lucky, and he noticed at the time that all of the technologies had evolved to a point where you could combine together the screen from a phone, the inertial sensors from a games controller, the graphics power that people had on their computers to play flat screen games. If you put all those things together, you could make a compelling VR headset suddenly. So we knew it was on. And suddenly, after 16 years of waiting, it was finally started. These were the three headsets that we've been using for the last couple of years: an Oculus Rift CV1, so the one you could buy in the shops, a Samsung Gear VR, which was one you could put your phone in the front of. Some of you may have tried that. And then this thing called an HTC Vive, and that's the one I would normally bring to this event because it does an amazing job. How many people have tried virtual reality before? Can you raise your hand if you've tried it? Good answer. But for how many people is it something like this, where it's a plastic housing that you put your phone in front of, or cardboard or something? Is it that kind of virtual reality for most people? So since sort of a year ago, we don't really consider that entry-level virtual reality anymore. The big problem with a headset like that is that you only have 3 degrees of freedom tracking. So you're basically a head on a swivel, and you can look up and down and side to side. You can't do anything. You can't interact with the world. So if your reality is being just a head that can swivel and tilt and pitch, then maybe you'd call that virtual reality. But to us, the reality is about moving around and seeing things from different perspectives and moving objects, changing the position of chairs and stuff. That's what reality's like. So the new virtual reality can do that kind of stuff. And we call that 6 degrees of freedom, or room scale virtual reality. Now, as I say, a few months ago, you needed a $5,000 laptop and a whole lot of beacons and things to do that. Elodie's doing room scale 6 degrees of freedom virtual reality now with just a mobile headset. And what I mean by that is that her perspective on the world changes with respect to where she moves. So she can walk inside a model here of a giant pumping heart, or she can duck underneath and see it from below, or she can reach out and grab it and scale it bigger, or shrink it down smaller, or turn it around. Basically, she's interacting with the world in a way that's a bit like real life, kind of. So this is Mark Zuckerberg. He's the one who spent $2.5 billion buying out that crappy old headset. He wanted to put, his big claim is that he wants to get 1 billion people in there. Obviously, he wants a massive social network where you can talk to your friends like on Facebook, but face-to-face, and shake hands and play games. Here he is a couple of months ago celebrating the fact that they've made it to 1% of 1 billion people. So it's tiny, tiny early days, super early days at the moment. But the fantasy is that, we'll all be able to be one planet of people getting on with each other and learning from each other. So anyway, AR, VR, I wanted to first clear that one up, because everybody's always asking, how come you do all VR and not AR? I'll quickly explain the difference between VR and AR. I'm sure you guys know already, but VR is where the headset completely controls everything you see. So when I have a phone in front of here, I can see nothing except the phone, so the computer makes the entire world. AR is where this headset also uses a phone, but the phone goes up at the top, and I'm looking through a half-silvered mirror, so I can see the world through the lenses and the computer display on the phone, and it's a hybrid of the real world and the virtual world. A more ambitious version of that's called mixed reality, and mixed reality is where your headset also has a depth sensor on it, and it can start to make sense of the real world. So it can see, there's a chair, and it can put a computer-generated character behind the chair, where the chair occludes the view of the virtual character, and you start to become sort of half real and half virtual. A lot of people are really excited about that, partly because it's still at the top of the hype cycle. You might have heard of the hype cycle, where everybody gets incredibly excited about new technology, and then they're very disappointed when it doesn't do everything they've fantasized about, and eventually it comes up onto what they call the plateau of productivity. AR is still way up in the top of the hype cycle, and everyone's thinking, this is going to change the world. Everybody's going to wear these goggles all of the time, walking around the uni, and all this information's going to pop out. We're not that excited about it yet, partly because the headsets are very disappointing, and partly because we want to fully control the world. We don't want to show you additional information on top of this theatre or my laboratory. We want to be inside someone's bloodstream, or we want to be, flying around planets, or we want to be doing an operating procedure in a operating theatre that we don't have access to. You're just standing in the lab looking like an operating theatre. So we're still more excited about VR. When there's a good AR headset, maybe we'll get more excited about that. Here's some graphics that try and explain what's going on there. So this is what the view through an augmented reality headset looks like, sort of ghostly superimposed computer graphics over a real-world image, partly due to the technical limitations. Mixed reality is where the computer's starting to make sense of the fact that, I can put that virtual duck behind that real table, and it kind of looks like it's in the room. And then virtual reality, full control of the virtual world. So the big distinction I was making earlier is this 3 degrees of freedom, 6 degrees of freedom thing. I think this is the other important thing to keep in mind, is that if you think you've seen VR because you've used a 3 degrees of freedom system, that's kind of a kid's toy as far as we're concerned. 6 degrees of freedom, this moving around and interacting and doing things in the virtual world, is kind of basic entry level now, especially now the price tag has come down to $650, not $6,000. So 6 degrees of freedom, that's where virtual reality is at from ever since. And this is why, if I'm 3 degrees, I just look and I passively absorb the world. If I have 6 degrees of freedom, I can go and get behind the sunken ship and duck from the shark, or throw stuff back at the shark and, interact with my world. These are the sort of portable goggles that we've had access to of late. You all right? You're getting very close to the wall there, Lydia. I just let you know. Okay, good. You've got a warning. She has what's called a chaperone bounds around her. So if she walks too far, the computer will warn her, and she'll be safe. Don't worry about that. So anyway, these are the goggles that you've probably seen before, all the way down to this funny one by Google, literally made out of cardboard, which, did an okay job if you were, as I say, a 3 degrees of freedom, some children's toy, end of the spectrum person. And then there were these headsets, which were much fancier, some of them did 6 degrees of freedom and standalone, no computer. They were a little bit exotic until this one came out, and now everybody's buying these up. Apparently they can't make them as fast as they can sell them, so we've got a dozen of them so far. Every time groups of students come, we can put everybody into virtual reality together. These are the tethered ones. So we still use tethered headsets because if you plug into a desktop computer, you have 20 or 50 times as much graphics power, and you can do crazy, amazing things. You can import scans from an MRI machine, horrible volumetric data sets that a portable device doesn't have the power to render. On a desktop machine, they're so ridiculously powerful now. There's no limit to how many assets you can import before your computer starts to melt. So we still use the tethered ones, but as I say, this new one's completely mind-bending. So why are we doing all this 6 degrees of freedom versus 3 degrees of freedom? It's because, as far as I'm concerned, there's kind of a hierarchy of not just virtual reality hardware, but there's also an important hierarchy in virtual reality content. I found this graphic the other day that I think beautifully explains how I feel about it, where, down at the sort of lowest of the low end of content for virtual reality and the learning experience is the passive observational only, sort of absorbing information, not participating end of the spectrum. And the easiest way to create content like that is to use a 3D, 360-degree camera. So I could literally put this camera on a tripod over there and press go, and it would record the entire room with 2 cameras pointing in every direction, so it's get stereo. And at the end of 10 minutes, I'd have 10 minutes of virtual reality content, because I could just put that 10 minutes of video in my headset and stand in the middle of it and watch it and say, wow, this looks like exactly like being inside this theatre. The big problem with that kind of content is that it's totally passive and linear, so all you can do is just watch. You can only watch from one perspective, the same place that the camera was physically placed. You can't move and look from a different perspective, and you can't interact with the world. You can't speak to anybody, and you can't move anything. All you can do is just watch the thing playing back. So to me, that's more like just getting a normal TV and stretching it around your head and making it 360, and then, passively watching TV. That doesn't get us going. One step up from that is explorative stuff. So it's still 360, but the content is being created by a computer. So you can do things like the video will pan inside a cell, and you feel like you're on a journey passing inside a cell, and you still only look around, but you sort of feel like it's at least moving. And then there's this next layer where you start to be seeing models, 3D models with labels and things, and you can start to sort of poke things and learn a little bit more about it. A step above that is interactive. So now you can start to get planets, and you can move a planet from one orbit to another and set it going again, and it'll keep orbiting the sun, and you can start to mess around with stuff. Complex interactive is, where things that you do have consequences. So an example of that might be a simulation of anesthetic machining. You can wiggle all the knobs and do things, and the simulated animal either lives or dies depending on if you get the knobs and the sliders right on your anesthetic machine. I'd call that a complex interactive simulation. But there's still those 2 steps above that. The step 1 over that is collaborative. So you do all that previous stuff, but you do it with other students or in collaboration with teachers, with people all over the world. And this is where VR is just streets ahead of every other version of education, because you can connect together with people all over the world. Anybody who has an internet connection can be standing in effectively the same room as you and working together. And the one above that, the top of the range as far as we're concerned, is making your own content. So the best kind of education is where students build and learn and develop their own educational material in collaboration with other students that does all of this stuff, complex interaction and simple interaction. So we're all really excited about this end of the spectrum, not so much about this end of the spectrum. That's the sort of project we get students to do. This stuff at the top of the range, we still get students to do. And that's where I think it gets really cool. So what Elodie's, I'll talk a little bit about what Elodie's showing us. So this is the sort of stuff that an Oculus Quest can do. She's now in a hospital ward. And, the idea here is that if you want to go around to the other side of a hospital bed, you can either teleport there or fly there, or you can, if you want to keep the immersion, you can physically walk there. So if her tracking volume is set large enough, and a Quest can accommodate a tracking volume 7.5 metres by 7.5 metres, the action of going to the other side of a hospital bed to turn off the alarm on some respirator or something involves physically walking around to the other side of a hospital bed. And if you haven't experienced how much more immersive that is, you should come and visit the lab, because you will soon forget you are in the lab if you're in a virtual world with 6 degrees of freedom tracking, where you have enough room to physically move, because physically moving convinces your brain, this is me doing this, I'm walking and I'm feeling all of the motion cues that go along with what I'm attempting to achieve, and your brain starts to think this is just as real as real. So this is another slide. The same. I was searching around for slides like this, and there were heaps of slides that they all say the same thing. Bottom of the rung for learning and education is this passive remembering, absorbing information like a parrot, and then you go up and up through the scale until you get to create. So building your own material is the top of the range. Here's another one saying the same thing. At the bottom is remembering, all the way up through the various stages until you get to creating stuff. So what we try and do in the lab at the moment is get students to build their own content. Now, that was impossible 6 months ago, and the reason it was impossible was because you needed a computer programmer with years of experience to sit at a computer and write C code to implement even trivial stuff. Even if you used what was the standard a game engine called Unity. Most people would develop their content using this thing called Unity, which would try and make it a bit friendlier by giving you a little window of what your 3D model might look like. But then on the other side of the screen, you had this miserable list of C code, and if you weren't a computer programmer and had 6 months to spend and $60,000 to invest, you were basically going to achieve very little. It doesn't work like that anymore. So this is medical stuff. We're really excited about doing medical stuff. This is why we're super excited. So someone else has looked after the hardware. Facebook spent $2.5 billion making the hardware amazing. We don't have to worry about that. Somebody else made the metaverse. So this crazy guy in the Czech Republic, he realized 4 years ago when everybody else was thinking, oh, it's starting to happen. He just shut his bedroom door, sat at his computer for 3 years and wrote what was called a metaverse engine, because he realized 3 years from now there's going to be some really good hardware. There's going to be no way for anybody to use it. If I build this platform, then everybody will be able to create content themselves. I'll be able to democratize the creation of virtual reality content. There's some of you, maybe you've all been too busy studying, but did anybody see this movie, Ready Player One, about a year ago? Kind of a kid's movie. In the movie, basically, they were saying, oh, in the year 2035, the world's going to be trashed, the climate will be ruined, overpopulation, everybody will be living in stacks of ships' containers, and their quality of life will revolve around their ability to get into virtual reality where everything's amazing and they can ski down the pyramids with their friends on snowboards and they can go off and have space battles. And the movie said this is all going to happen in 2035, and we went, oh, that's interesting, because that started last year. A guy already posted or distributed the metaverse engine the year before this movie came out. So the three big things that this engine does for you, if you have a look at it, it makes content creation super easy. It handles all of the local remote collaboration, and as I was saying, that's kind of the second from the top step. So it solves the top step, creating content. It solves the second from the top step, interactive collaboration across the world. And it also the third really important thing is it makes whatever you make persistent. So the idea there is that the metaverse, a collection of virtual worlds, is always out there. You know, if you build a world and you go and you turn off your computer and you do something else for a week, you can come back and your world is still there. It exists in some continual sense. And during that week, if you left the permissions open, somebody else can come and work on that world, a bit like a sort of Google Docs thing. And then you come back and you go, oh, great, someone's finished my, stage 3. Now I can do stage 4. And when, your development becomes multiple people adding layer upon layer upon layer because of persistence, that's how you build, incredible things, basically. Lots of people together adding and adding and adding. So this is what content creation looked like 6 months ago. This is the screen from Unity. So in the left portal, I've got a sort of 3D model that I can turn and rotate around. And on the right side, I've got my code, and I'm writing my scripts. Oh, if someone presses this button, do this, blah, 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 blah. 6 weeks gone, $60,000 down the toilet. This is what content creation looks like using the metaverse engine. So this is Elodie and I together. We're flying around. I sped this up 5 times. It actually took us 10 minutes. What we were doing was trying to build this facility it's drawn on the architectural plans for Westmead Hospital called the Innovation Lab. And they plan to have a cave, which is like a video box that you stand in and look around, and this giant LCD screens of 6 meters long. And we wanted to argue to Andrew Black, the guy that's now running the shop out there, don't waste your money on that stuff. With virtual reality, you can build all of that in 10 minutes and anything else, basically. Buy yourself a dozen VR headsets and stick them in that room and you'll be far better off. But the video shows that content creation suddenly becomes physical. So all of the skills you already have, if I wanted to put 6 chairs around a table, I could do that without too much trouble because I've done that since I was a kid. You just take a chair and you put a chair and you put a chair. That's how you do content creation in the metaverse. You literally just open your hard disk, pull out a chair, cut and paste 5 more copies of it, place them around the table, put the table, instantly you've built a table and chairs. So we built this facility. It took us 5 minutes, and then as a joke at the end, we dismantled it all again, deleted it, and flew off into the universe, suggesting, wouldn't it be better to have this level of freedom rather than a sort of sit around a table and watch a big screen for no apparent reason level of detail? So that's what content creation looks like. This was another example. This one's sped up 30 times because I wanted to show that Elodie during a demonstration for the Sydney Science Forum, for the Innovation Week last year. She spent an hour doing this live demo, and in 1 hour she built 12 worlds. The first one was the streets of Paris, and then she had to fix a couple of problems with the alpha channels, and then she was going down into the streets of Paris and doing an experiment about wayfinding for people with early onset dementia, and then boom, another world. So she did a world every 10 minutes like a train. At the same time, she was teaching 3 other students how to do it. So there's multiple people there in headsets, some of whom have never been in VR before. So she's explaining to them, this is how you change a texture, and this is how you scale something, and in the middle of the demonstration, 5 more people arrived from America. So she was building 12 worlds and teaching 3 students how to do it and dealing with this invasion of people from the United States and Europe who just wanted to have a party and were, creating lasers and dragons with breathing fire and stuff. And she was able to do all that because she's embodied, she's actually there physically, feels like she's there physically in the world, so she can do things without thinking, using all of the same tacit knowledge that she's developed over her entire life or millions of years of evolution. So here she was building the operating theatre from scratch and putting a patient and getting a camera and using laparoscopic instruments. And it just basically, in an hour, she'd built 12 examples. On the strength of that, you would be surprised how much content you can create in no time flat. So this is my sort of storage room in my home world in the Metaverse engine, and each of these bubbles is an application that we've built. One to have a medical bent, here's a surgical thing, or here's a police training one, or this one takes you inside the particle accelerator in CERN to learn physics, or here's a chemistry lab where you can use a pipette to mix chemicals. Each one of these bubbles is one world like that because it takes you a few days or the most a week to build a world, if that's the term for it, rather than months and weeks, tens of thousands of dollars. So we have 250 worlds like that, and we, as I say, they're persistent, so we can go there anytime. We can think, where's that world I made a year ago, and go and collect some asset that we previously made and carry it to another world, and basically it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. These are just the medical ones, so there's lots on dental and there's lots on vet, heaps of stuff about Westmead Hospital because the uni's very excited about doing more at Westmead Hospital. Some training stuff for vestibular because we do balance function in ear research. But what we're really keen on is medical education. So, the big question is, but how is this actually useful? Could students really use this? And luckily, we had the VC come to visit the lab, the Vice-Chancellor of the uni, the guy who runs the shop. It took us 5 years to get him to come and visit, so we were pretty pleased when he finally did. And one of his questions was, but how does this scale? I know you guys have got 3 headsets and you can go off to the metaverse, but how can lots of students go and benefit from this? So luckily we were able to show him, here's 140 vet students in groups coming and doing this exercise where they had a bony specimen, a front leg of a dog, and they had to dismantle it all and reassemble it all and label all of the bones using their colleague as a buddy. And so I was luckily able to answer this question. Yes, it does scale. You can do whole classes, you can do whole courses, you could basically, the more headsets you've got, the more you could do. If I had enough headsets, we could all be in there now. This seems ridiculous to me, even now that we're watching virtual reality on a flat screen, when we should all be in there, seeing the 3D high-resolution version, standing together, or talking with people in America and Europe. But hey, we don't have the headsets yet. Maybe next time. Maybe I will leave the music stuff. So this is a quick show reel of just vet stuff. So these are examples of what the vet students did. The vet students built that. That was 8 vet students doing the leg thing I was talking about, labelling the bones on the leg. There's a couple of vet students doing surgery on a cat. There's a couple of students trying to find a tick on that dog, and they're feeling around on the dog. And when they put their hand close, their controller vibrates. They can use a magnifying glass to take the tick and put it under a microscope. And under the microscope, they can tell which of the 3 species of tick it is. And then they go off and they mark not a map of where those ticks live in Australia, but a globe of where those ticks live. So they're actually flying in space and they're drawing, I think we have paralysis ticks live here, bush ticks live here. And my argument was, this is better than doing it on paper because the students that learn where ticks live this way are never going to forget where brown ticks live. They're always going to remember the experience of flying up and drawing it on the actual sphere of the earth. Here's a museum full of osteology, so you can pull in the bones, the skeleton of any animal. So we're going to ride the way I explain. You know, you can do whatever you like. You can fly in virtual reality. You can scale any object. You can scale yourself. You can use telekinesis to move things from a great distance. You can go backwards in time to ancient Rome. You can go forwards in time to a spaceship doing light speed. You can do anything in there. So we think that's just a couple of examples for vet, but there's every subject we can think of basically has open-ended applications of this kind of technology. Student creation. So as I say, the thing that really gets me up in the morning is seeing students build their own stuff. So I asked the vet students, a couple of vet students, just second years, why don't you go off on the internet and try and find some assets and come back and build yourself?
Welcome to the Sydney University Virtual Reality Teaching Hospital.
This is the vet students who never used virtual reality before. They went away, they jumped on the internet, and they came back with a memory stick full of stuff they'd found, like, you know, dog biscuits and a CT scanner and a dog and all sorts of stuff. They brought back 2,176 objects on their stick. I was like, Jesus, this is going to be fairly intense for my computer. And they put a secretary, and they put the cash card machine, and they put all of these
the receptionist,
toys that you could buy for your dog in the front room, because they were explaining to me, it's very important that we get a massive markup when we sell all this crap out in the front room. It subsidises, it's helping
ranging from food to medication,
belonging to people who can't afford to pay out in the back room. So it's very important to have lots of products and toys and stuff that you can sell at some massive markup. But they implemented this entire hospital
over this way, we've got
by
some
themselves, no previous access to virtual reality, 4 hours.
And all the patients are queuing up.
They built such a complicated world. It's probably the most complicated world that I have.
Here's one of our consultation
rooms. They had
rooms.
no conception about graphics power and the load that they were putting, so they would just put a packet of biscuits and then cut another one, cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste. Put
and
50
back
packets
out to
of biscuits,
reception.
and my computer was just saying, how many polygons and how much texture are you going to put into
follow
this
you
world?
Through.
And I could hear all of the computers in the room spinning up.
See where we've got our centrifuge machines.
But in 4 hours, they built this amazing asset.
And over here, our microscopes.
You could use the microscopes. You could pat the dogs. You could do some surgery. You could use the X-ray machine. You could sell products.
And we'll follow you through to the kennel room.
Deal with difficult customers. Completely blew us away. So this is what students can do if you just get out of the way and you let them get at the equipment. So we just went and we did our email while they looked after building this hospital. And at the end, I went and tweaked a couple of things that they didn't know how to do, but nearly nothing, basically. 99% built by them. And what happens next? So what's going to happen after this? Whoa, it's hard to tell. Virtual reality is just happening so fast. Every week we're shocked at the new gadget that comes and the new application that comes and the new features of the metaverse engine. You know, suddenly there's eye tracking working, and suddenly all of our fingers move in gruesome detail. We can do sort of sign language if we were deaf, and suddenly we can barely keep up with the rate at which stuff comes. But it's all about to go on steroids with artificial intelligence, which is another of these, rapidly evolving technologies, massively disruptive technologies. I wanted to show you a tiny example where this is supposedly a virtual world built by an AI and not by a human, where they asked the computer, build us a 1970s messy teenager's bedroom. And this is what it did. It's laid out all the stickers that it had found that were relevant to the 70s, Star Wars on the wall and an old games console and a funny old phone from the 70s and all of the stuff that, somehow the AI is associated with a 1970s bedroom. And we laughed and we said, the computer didn't build that. Look, that's different. Obviously a human being has built that. There's no way AI could get its head around that. Until they showed us this. So this video shows what happens if, after you've asked it to build this bedroom, you adjust a slider for messiness. So if you drag the slider down and you say, I want it a bit tidier, everything in the room goes aligned and the clothes go back up onto the clothes hooks and the pizza box closes and goes into the rubbish. If you drag out to messy, everything comes out on the floor and all the games come out and the CDs are not in their covers and everything's the bed's no longer made. And we thought, oh my Lord, they really are getting an artificial intelligence to build a 1970s messy teenager's bedroom. So when that's available to you guys, you literally won't have to even do the sort of content creation I was showing you before. You'll be able to ask the computer, I want to train on anatomy and I want a model of this and I want it to look like this. Just do it. Do it. Make my content for me, Mr. Computer. And it'll have a go and you'll say, no, I wanted a healthy human heart, not that heart. And bloop, and suddenly there'll be a different heart floating in the air. So we think that's going to be completely mind-bending. When AI converges with virtual reality, you better get out of the way if you think you've still got a job if you're doing something that's AI can do. So this is where, as I say, again, the Quest got me really excited. This is an example of how ridiculously excited I got the day the Quest first turned up, because after 3 years of being attached to a tether and being trapped in a volume that was 4 metres by 4 metres, everything we'd done for 3 years was trapped inside this 4 by 4 metres. Amazing things inside the 4 by 4 metres, but we could never go beyond the walls of these 4 by 4 metres until the Quest came along. So as soon as I got it out of the box, I had to cycle around the room in virtual reality. Got me really excited because I'm free. There's no wire anymore. I'm not going to tangle myself up. I can go beyond 4 metres. I couldn't believe that this was the feeling of freedom that this provided. To such an extent that it got a bit dangerous, and I went out to my car parked in the street with the VR headset on. I sat in the car and I started the engine. I put my seatbelt on and I said, I'm going to drive around the block wearing the VR headset on. And a little voice said, what are you going to say to security if they pull you over and you're driving a car around, or the police perhaps? You're driving a car around with a VR headset with no actual vision of the world, just a virtual vision of the world. Probably not a good idea, but this is how excited we got, because, hey, there's no more wire. Maybe you guys will never consider the wire because you've just bypassed that phase, but tell you what, having no wire is a huge boost. And this is 10 quests or 8 quests. What we were trying to work out here is whether 8 quests were powerful enough to have 8 users in the same virtual world together. So you can see she's got 8 quests on the ground, and then in the metaverse, there's 8 headsets looking at each other. Everybody can see each other. Everyone can hear each other. Everyone can see each other's controllers. I can do something and you'll see what I'm doing. I can hand you something and you can take it and put it in your computer. We couldn't believe, oh my Lord, we can do that now. 8 users for the price of one old laptop from 6 months ago. Completely mind-bending. So we made this little video where we were experimenting with the registration of the room. So that works best if you get everybody's virtual worlds aligned so that you don't smash into each other, because the left side of the room is left for me and left for you. If you don't want to smash into each other, you register the rooms. So we did this experiment where we were passing this ball around to see, look how good the registration is. And some random stranger just appeared out of the air. This guy's in America. We are all standing registered in the same room such that we can physically pass him. And we turned off the audio because you get a funny echo if you're speaking in the same room as your audio system. You hear it all twice. So we turned off the echo. So we couldn't talk to this guy, and he just appeared, and he was very confused, and he was wondering, what are we doing here? What's happening? What's happening here? And then despite the fact that we can't explain to him what's happening, he then participated, and we were passing a ball from me to Elodie, from Elodie to Jameson in the lab, to a guy in America, back to me in the lab, to Elodie, to Jameson, to a guy in America. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? Three of these people are standing physically arranged such that we can reach out and touch the real person. And one of them's in America. It makes absolutely no difference. He was just as much there in the room as us, only, as I say, a little bit more confused. He's about to scratch his head and say, I don't understand what's happening.
We're dancing now.
Here he is, scratching his head. I don't know what's happening. So that's what the metaverse looks like. I tried to make this 3-minute video to explain what is going on here. Human beings connected up like this. So these are a bunch of human beings that are connecting in the lab, where the wire represents this metaverse engine. As soon as I connect each brain, the person comes awake and their brain lights up, because now they're suddenly attached to this high bandwidth connection to lots of amazing stuff happening out there in the world. Having connected up 4 users like this, you can do as many users as you want. And in fact, there's no longer even a wire. I guess if I was going to make this video this week, I would just do it all wirelessly. But the step up from that is obviously connecting people across the campus. So this is me making connections between the Griffin Taylor building, which is where we live, to the CBC, because we hours for you. And the last thing I wanted to say, I don't know where I am for time, but this is why I know it's going to fly. So this is a bunch of 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds using the Metaverse engine to build their own content. Now, we have had a really hard slog convincing the administration at the uni that virtual reality is definitely happening. You know, some people still say, oh, it's a fad, it's like 3D television, it's never going to happen. The kids just do not understand that this is maybe or maybe not happening. They just get it. So we put these 2 7-year-olds and a 5-year-old into virtual reality, and we said, go ahead, make your own content. So on the big screen behind you, you can see the world that they built themselves, where there's a giant trampoline there, and one of the kids wanted to be able to jump on the trampoline, and every time she got to the top of a jump, she wanted to be able to grab one of those stars out of the sky and put it in her basket, and then when she was finished, she wanted to be able to move between countries of the earth by touching these stars. The other girl wanted to do a drawing competition, so she put all these drawing tools that did amazing, you know, lightning and funny colours and things. And she said she wanted a row of judges for the drawing competition. So Elodie made these judges, animated them so that they could hold up cards, because the kids said the judges had to be able to hold up scorecards. And having implemented half of that, Elodie asked this 7-year-old girl, oh, okay, what numbers would you like on the cards? And the girl said, well, that depends how good the drawings are. And we thought, oh my God, this kid thinks that the computer is going to judge the quality of the art and generate judges who are going to hold up numbers with a 7, oh, this drawing's worth a 7, this drawing's worth a 4. They expect the computer to be able to do that. So, you know, this is virtual reality going to happen? It just made no sense to them. The 5-year-old kid, we were a bit nervous. We thought this might be too young, 5 years old. He's not going to be able to even operate the controls. Instead, he asked for a giant yellow car. You can see the car there. It's kind of black because it's lit from the bottom. But so we thought, oh, that's a bit predictable. He wants a toy car. So we made him a little toy car, a little yellow toy car off the internet. And straight away, he grabbed it and he stretched it up to full size. And then he opened the door and he got in behind the steering wheel, 5 years old. He pointed it at the sky and he flew the car into orbit and he said, I'm Elon Musk, I'm Elon Musk, I'm Elon Musk. And we were, what the 5-year-old is flying a car into orbit like Elon Musk that he made himself, that he scaled up to the size of a car, and we realised, oh, there's no stopping this. So you guys are the lucky ones, I think, because this is about to be a huge part of your education, if there's much left of it, or your jobs, your future jobs, if you're going to teach, if you're going to research. You're the lucky ones because you're getting on just at the right time. You don't have to wait 16 years like me with headset after headset worth of disappointment. The headsets are really good. The Metaverse engine's there to help you make content. Lucky old you, basically.
Thanks very much, Hamish. That's fabulous. It's really exciting. Any questions for Hamish?
There's one. Yeah, so, you know, basically it's rigged up to try and mimic the way the world works. So, you know, if I want to walk out there and explore and I find, oh, I've found a building here, I want to go inside and have a look around, the computer is basically allowing that. So can you go to a pink table from where you are? So Elodie can show you basically that if all she needs to go is go into her home, and over here there's a table. She's not connected to the internet in a way that will allow this, but if she was connected to the internet properly, you would see a bunch of bubbles floating on this table called currently active sessions, and each bubble you'd be able to hold it up to your face and have a look inside, and you'd see, oh, it looks like a disco in there, oh, that looks like fun, oh wow, what's going on there? Someone's doing some really complicated programming, and underneath it would say users 7, and over the top it would say by probable prime, so the name of the guy that was currently hosting the world. You just double click on it and bloop, you'd appear as if by magic, which, you know, is magic, because to make that work, your computer has to suddenly get all of the assets that those people are working on. So a thing called peer-to-peer networking happens where your computer says, oh, you've got a lot of new stuff in here that I've never seen before. I've never seen that cat, and I've never seen that yellow car, and I've never seen that ball. Give me all of those assets quickly on the internet so that I can make them appear on my user's version of the world, and then 30 seconds later we'll all be standing in an identical world. We'll all feel like it's the same world. So you get it currently active sessions that way. Otherwise, if there are about 1,000 worlds that people have posted up online, you can open them yourself and become the host. So you browse through and you look for stuff that's about chemistry, and you find there's 7 worlds, and you pick one, and now you're the host, which means that your version of the world pops up on that table and other people can connect to it. But only if you obviously make the permissions such that you're publicly visible. If you were trying to do a study group, you might say, oh, I don't want random Americans standing up and filling the place up with water and dragons breathing fire. We just want to work on our own. So you'd say only my friends, or only people on my local area network, or only invited people. So you can close it down, but if you leave it available, within 30 seconds someone will appear out of the air wearing a crazy alien avatar or something and say, what are you working on? And you'll say, I'm trying to get this program to do such and such. And they'll say, I know how to do that. And they'll get in and they'll help you do it, because it's at the moment a really fun and cooperative community. So it's your chance to learn some virtuality and run rings around the computer programmers, basically. If you go and get it, you can go and get this program. If you've got virtuality gear, you can go and get this program. It's all free. It's called Neos VR. You just download it, you find one of those bubbles, you connect, and you talk to people all over the world, and they're so friendly and welcoming, they will teach you how to make a cool avatar, how to get your hair flapping in the wind just right, or your tail flicking, and then they'll take you off to some disco and you'll all have a great old time. But if you want to, you can hack that same engine to do something useful like education or research, because the engine just provides the foundation for whatever you want to do, basically.